Jessica, how are you this afternoon?
Hi, Ted. Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Yeah, good. It's so glad you could be here. You and I got connected through Kara Peterson with Describe AI. I
Yeah,
had
it's
her.
funny. I was just on a call with Kara this morning planning a session that we're going to be doing at the LSC conference in January.
Oh, awesome. What is LSC?
The Legal Services Corporation, they do their
Oh,
Innovations in Technology conference where legal aid, tech innovators, people in the court space come together to sort of talk about tools that can help the justice gap.
interesting. Yeah. So, Legal Aid of North Carolina, I think I might have told you this on our last time we spoke. They were like one of our first legal clients, not the
Nice.
first, but really
Yeah.
early on. Um, I I forget the fellow's name there. This has been, she's 15, 16 years ago. I'm not sure if he's still there, but they needed a VDI, that's virtual desktop
Mm.
infrastructure. It's where, people log into remote desktops. And we were Citrix partners at the time because we were consultants and it was early days. So we would say yes to anything, right? Any kind of any kind of work, just anything that brought revenue in the
Yep.
door and paid the bills until we found our niche. um so yeah, I have a good understanding and history with the legal aid folks there. It's an
Yeah,
awesome
North Carolina
organization.
is really innovative. They do a lot of really interesting stuff, and they're on the cutting edge. So they've continued in the space too.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. So let's get you introduced. So you're a lawyer, a researcher. You work at the Free Law Project. Fill in the gaps for us. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Okay, so I am a lawyer, but I've never really practiced. I went straight into legal technology. I spent 12 years as a project manager at CALI, which is the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. I managed their A to J Author project, which is their document assembly tool in the legal aid court space. So, teaching law students how to automate documents, talking to legal aid attorneys in courts and teaching them how to use the software. Everything about plain language, accessibility, making the process easier for self represented litigants. About a year ago, I jumped over to the Free Law Project and I started as a user researcher project manager on a grant funded project to figure out if there is an open source alternative to e-filing that we could build, or a tool or some sort of open source case management. It's very open ended. Over the past year, I've sort of brought my love of access to justice and self-represented litigants into the Free Law Project. Sort of turned our focus. And about 2 weeks ago, I became the director of a new division we're calling the Justice Initiatives Division. And we're going to build out tech tools for the courts, for legal aid, for self represented litigants, all open source, all within Free Law projects, open data and technology to make the law better, with a real focus on a tool we're calling the Litigant Portal. That'll be our first one, but we're open to other avenues to make the legal system better through technology for
That's
self represented litigants.
That's awesome. Yeah, A to J gets like, this is my impression. I don't know if you would agree or not. Like A to J gets a lot of I'll call it honorable mention,
Mm,
but not really enough airtime in the space. It is such
agree.
a massive, huge issue, and we all know it. And like when I go to conferences, I went to TLTF 2 years ago, and there was an awesome, I can't remember her name. She presented on, she was actually impacted. So she was a struggling single mom, accidentally bounced a check. They initiated in some states, it's a criminal offense, including
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina, to bounce a check. And that little minor infraction ended up really causing her to lose access to employment
Yeah.
and all sorts of things. And so yeah, I think it's important that we talk about it in more depth than
Sure.
just A to J. It's a problem, we know it, but not really
Yeah.
doing much about it. So um, maybe you can kind of quantify the problem, because you shared some interesting
Mhm.
statistics last time we spoke. Like how what's the magnitude of the gap?
Yeah. So, I went to law school, right? So I graduated in 2011. I left it and had no idea that there was this whole world of people that can have life changing consequences, like you described, and they don't have access to a lawyer. So a lot of times we think about, you're too poor to afford attorney, so that one is provided for you, right? The law and order stereotype. But that's not the case in civil law. There's no constitutional right to an attorney in a civil case. And people don't understand that civil cases can be as life impacting as a criminal case. So you can get up to a year in prison in a civil case. You can lose your kids in custody, family matters, divorce. You can lose your home, right? Foreclosure, eviction. You can have your paycheck taken away, right? If you have a debt issue. And so there's all of these things that are bubbling up in civil court that are hugely impacting people's lives. Civil court's actually where they're spending a lot of time. Most people are interacting with the justice system through civil court, and they don't have the right to an attorney. So some statistics, right? So the Legal Services Corporation is the entity funded by Congress to provide for legal aid across the country. There are LSC funded legal aid organizations in every state. And they have an interesting project called, or a funding stream called the TIG. So Technology Innovation Grants, special money set aside to do innovative things with technology to impact the justice gap. So the justice gap in general, right? So 2022 study from the Legal Services Corporation. It's literally called the Justice Gap Report. Something like 92% of people who are low income have a legal issue and they can't or don't address it. So people are sitting there, hundreds of millions of people. I think I did a little statistics with the census. Something like potentially 100 million people are sitting around with life-changing, potentially legal issues, and they're not dealing with them because they don't have money for an attorney. They don't know that it's a legal issue. Or they go to legal aid and there's not enough help there to actually get them the free lawyers that we've provided through uh, federal funding streams or local funding streams. So it's really a lot of people are dealing with the justice gap, and technology is around to help. And so that's what I've spent my career working on.
Interesting. Yeah. So my first entrepreneurial venture was a collection agency.
Mhm.
So started it in 1992. I wasn't even old enough to drink at the time. Dropped out of college for a year, ended up going back part time at night and finishing my degree. But that was an interesting business because I would say the vast majority of the debts that we were collecting, people just didn't care.
Mhm.
It wasn't, hey, I'm a hardworking person and I fell on some hard times. And, we would work with those people because it was in
Mhm.
our best interest to do so, even if they could pay us a very small amount, a week or a month or whatever. It was something, and it would keep the creditor at bay because something is better than nothing. But in certain circumstances, we would file civil actions for bigger debts, and I would say probably 90+% resulted in a default
Mhm.
judgment because they just wouldn't show, and then we'd have to go about the process of, and we have to do collection agencies and collection attorneys. They have to perform some due diligence before they it even make decide if it makes sense to file a case, because if
Mhm.
there's no assets to attach the judgment to, then you've wasted your time. But yeah, I got a really interesting view of that, probably a bit skewed because I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who do fall on hard times and really have good intentions, but in the collection business, you kind of see so much of the
Mhm.
bad, it kind of skews your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually grew up in a collection agency. My dad owned one when I was a kid. So I grew up walking the aisles like with the people working the phones and that kind of stuff. So it's a funny connection. But mine is my push here is not that, like, a lot of people know that they owe the debt, right? But they don't know that there is a solution. They don't know their legal rights or their legal remedies. They don't know that The creditor has to follow certain guidelines or certain restrictions, rules. They have to have paperwork in place. And there's a lot of, for example, in the debt collection space, like a lot of people are selling it pennies on the dollar. It's transferring hands. There's not a lot of proof about who owns the debt. My argument is that it's not necessarily we're trying to wipe away all of this debt that is legally owed, whatever it is. It's that you have to follow the rules, right? And so when I went to law school, I wanted to be in criminal defense. That was sort of I didn't know going into law school what I wanted to do. I was sure it wasn't criminal defense. And then I took a criminal defense class and I was like, oh, no, I want to be a criminal defense attorney. Because for me, it's following the rules. Like, I would want to defend someone who's potentially guilty to ensure that the system works for that one person down the line that is innocent and that we don't let it slide. And so it's the same thing in like debtor court, making sure that people are following the paperwork and that, homes aren't getting foreclosed upon because lenders didn't follow the proper procedures because they were selling, you know, I'm sorry, like 40,000 loans all bulk together for pennies on the dollar. It's just giving people who have to represent themselves because they're low income or because we live in a DIY culture and they don't want to spend $5,000 on an attorney, giving them the leg up or they know the heuristics, the rules of thumb, the procedures they're supposed to follow, the potential answers or the defenses that are available to them and letting them use it. So it's not wiping everything away. It's just putting people on an equity, having like an equal footing for whoever the party is, self-represented litigant or lawyer.
Yeah, and there are, Fair Debt Collection Practices
Mhm.
Act, Fair Credit Reporting Act. They were put in place. There have been a lot of abuses in the debt collection space, and it's a good thing. Like reputable debt collectors very much appreciate those statutes because they keep the bad behavior at a minimum. Because there's some very stiff penalties for violating them.
Yeah.
So, tell me about free law and what
Sure.
you guys specifically do at the Free Law Project.
Yeah, so we're a legal tech nonprofit, and we one of our first products was or tools was Court Listener, and it gathers up case law from state courts, from federal courts, all of the Supreme and appellate level courts across the U.S. We had initial partnerships with like the Harvard Case Law Access Project, so we have case law that goes back to the 1600s. So, if you're a real nerd and you want to dive deep on the internet in what was going on in 1692, we have that for you. But we're providing this platform for free. We put the legal research tools out there on our website, and people are free to use them. So a lot of small firms, solos, journalists, academic purposes are using it because the legal research tools that are out there are very expensive and can be cost prohibitive. We're also integrating that in for the self-represented litigants, the same idea that they're not going to have access to the underlying precedents that could support their case. It's available. We also have a tool called Recap. Recap archive is Pacer backwards, and it's about 500 million docket entries from the federal e-filing system. Pacer is the federal e-filing system. It's got documents, dockets, ongoing litigation. So we have final opinions in our case law and ongoing litigation, and we open it up for bulk downloads for free. Everyone can just go and use it. The tools are on our website if you want to search individually. Or we have APIs that are available so that people like Kara, that's how we were integrated into Describe, can use our legal data, which is sort of a unique corpus of content in the space, to train their tools, and so that the tools that are being built are being built on legitimate legitimate data sources, and that people have access to the sort of the same. It's that equity idea, right? They have access to the same content regardless of how much money you have to spend on legal research.
Interesting. So my company, Infodash, we are intranet, extranet provider, and it's not what when people think of intranets, they think of like, hey, where do I go to find the lunch menu? Like
The shared drive. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. This is a much more, we like to call it kind of digital workplace, but as part of, we build dynamic client and matter pages. And in the past, we have integrated with Pacer
Hmm.
and I hope your API is better than theirs,
Yes.
because we had some real challenges, like show-stopping issues that we
Yeah.
had to create workarounds where duplicate, like, it was just a mess.
Yeah,
So
we also do advocacy too, right? So we want to make the system better altogether. Part of what I've been doing for the last year and what Mike Listener, my boss, did before I joined, is the Open Courts Act. So there was a 2023 version, there's a 2025 version. We're working with Congress to get changes to Pacers so that they're up to modern tech standards. And that they are free where possible. It's kind of crazy. The Pacer system charges 10 cents a page, like you'd have to fax it somewhere or someone would have to physically make a copy, which was set, I guess, historically back in like the 90s when you had to call in and you had like pay per page, which is crazy because that's not how the internet works today, right? Like, why are you paying 10 cents a page? One of the cool things we have is called the Recap extension. It's a browser plugin that you can put in, and there's 35,000 people who have it. And so it's crowdsourcing Pacer content. And so once someone buys it on their Pacer account, if they have the extension in, it gets sent to our system, and then everybody has access to it because it's not violating their TOS. Once you buy it, you can do whatever you want with it. And so people are sharing what they're already purchasing, which is helping build up this open community of data in the legal space.
interesting. So how Kara and I got connected, actually, we were on a podcast together, or LinkedIn Live, like a couple years ago, but we got reconnected. There was a post about how all this new, I'm using air quotes here
Mhm.
for listeners, all this new free law data that was available on Hugging Face.
Mhm.
And Kara was like, yeah, that's really not the situation. Well, there's much more to the story than that. And I think it was maybe that Harvard Law Project. And
Yeah.
didn't that have an end date?
It did. They were scanning books till about 2018. So
Yeah.
after about 2018, 2019, we have court scrapers that go out and pull in our data now. So we're not scanning books. We're pulling it from the source, from the courts. We have a whole team that spends a lot of time, making sure the courts feel good and don't block us and in terms of the scrapers. But we have 200 plus court scrapers that are out there pulling new content in every day.
Interesting. And we talked a little bit about legal aid,
Mhm.
and I think you had mentioned that less than half, or maybe even a fourth, of people who qualify for assistance can actually get served through that channel. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, assume someone figures out that they have a legal issue, right? Like an eviction notice shows up on their door, or they have some sort of custody issue. They figure out where their legal aid is, which they're googling, and the SEO on legal aid websites is not necessarily going to be as high as John Smith, the local attorney, who's going to have a lot of Google ads coming in. So they find their legal aid. They either sit in line on a hotline and wait to talk to someone to do intake, or they show up in person. And then they go through the whole process. They tell their whole story. It's, hours of their life, right? And then they get told, well, I'm sorry, we don't have enough resources to help you because there isn't enough money for everyone who shows up to get a lawyer one-to-one. There's not enough money for even like low levels of representation, just help filling out a form, that kind of stuff. And so, we worked in my old job. We worked with Nevada Legal Services. They were telling us they turn away up to like 76% of people one year. So it's like, it's so much bigger than that, though, because that's the people who figured out they had a legal issue, figured out legal aid was the right source for them. They were poor enough to go to legal aid and then made it there, and they still got turned away. And the income levels for legal aid is something like 125% of the poverty guidelines. I don't know what the poverty guidelines is today, but it's like somebody who makes like $19,000 a year for a family.
Wow.
If you have a kid, it's like, I don't know, $20,000 a year. Like who is really able to live and handle and take time off work to address these issues? You just don't have that at, $8 an hour salaries, and you're scraping by. And so yeah, they're turning away huge numbers of people. And that's where the LSC's TIGs, the Technology Innovation Grants, come in, because legal aid saw that they were never going to have enough attorneys. There's never going to be the political will nationally to have one-to-one attorney representation funded by the public. And so they need to do something else. And so they turn to tech. And that's where there has been I don't know the year, but 20, 30 years of innovation in legal intake, in document assembly, in text messaging, in website improvement, in self-help resources, because legal aid is end running around the court. The court's not providing this to self-represented litigants, so legal aid is doing it to help as many people as possible because they have to turn away so many for one-to-one.
And then you talked about something called the Litigant Portal. Is
Mhm.
this a solution designed to help with this gap?
Yeah, so the Litigant Portal is sort of my idea that came out of what Free Law Project had when I started and my history of working with self-represented litigants. And so there's been a lot of work in this TIG space in the court and legal aid for self-help, but it's still just disjointed. So there are legal help websites in every state has at least one funded from LSC. There's a lot of document assembly software, automated forms out there. So my old tool, A to J Author, had something like 1,000 A to J guided interviews out there in the world, but it's very disproportionately divided. So Illinois has a couple of hundred, Michigan has a couple of hundred, Arkansas has like three or four. Like it's very unequal in the distribution. And then there's a lot, the final step of getting it to the courthouse is still missing. So in a lot of states, self-represented litigants are either can use e-filing if it's available, but it's permissive. It's not required like it is for attorneys, or they're banned from using it. So they still, even if they get help filling out the form, they still have to take the day off of work and show up between, 9 to 4 at the courthouse that could be 50 miles from their home, probably not easy with public transportation. And then they get it in and they file it. And then there's no reminder. So the litigant portal is the idea that came out of helping my mom with her doctor's appointments. The doctors all have my health app, mydoctor.com. They're always telling you to download the app, right? And you can communicate with the doctor whatever time, 8:30 at night when I'm laying in bed, if my kids are asleep, I can email my mom's doctor. I can schedule appointments. I get reminders. They send me 47 text messages that I have a dentist appointment on Tuesday. Like, I got it. That doesn't exist in the legal space. So that's what the litigant portal is. It's going to be a integrated into court systems. So we're partnering with courts to have this on their websites rather than sitting somewhere else or an end run from legal aid. It's going to come from the court because that's where the justice is supposed to be occurring. They're going to learn about their rights and their remedies. So they're going to be able to tell their story. And some of this is going to have Gen AI components to it. We have an AWS Imagine grant that's pending, fingers crossed, to build that in. So they're going to learn about their legal rights and remedies, and it's going to provide them with a sort of like, you could do this. So you could get a warm handoff to legal aid. You could get a pro bono attorneys. Here's a list of bar association approved attorneys. Here's some DIY forms that you could do. If they do the DIY forms, they're going to be taken down and help, answer the questions, get the completed thing. And then because we're piloting with the courts, it's going to be e-filed directly with the court. They're going to get a case number back. They're going to potentially have a place for e-service from the other side. Because the other part of this is that it's hard for attorneys who have to work with self-represented litigants as the other side as well. And it's hard for the judges and the clerks, and it clogs up our justice system because the people don't know how to do it and they do it wrong, and everybody is frustrated. So let's use tech to sort of lubricate that and make it a smoother process. And so e-service can come back. Text message reminders that say, hey, you have court in 3 days. Don't bring your phone. Phones aren't allowed anymore in court. Here's the parking situation. Here's the public transit. Like all those things you don't need to know 6 weeks in advance, that you need to know just at the point in which you're ready to go to court and get that reminder that, this is happening in 3 days. That's when we're going to feed back that just in time information to them. Kind of like a case management system, a platform for self-represented litigants, but that the court is providing. And so there's no money. There's no, are you the plaintiff? Are you the defendant? Some of that happens in legal aid, that they're focused more on like defendants than plaintiffs, whatever. So that's the litigant portal, the dream. And I'm onboarding a new dev today to help start building that dream. And we're building partnerships, and we're always looking for new courts too.
And how are you funded?
So we fund a lot of our nonprofit work on the back of our data licensing. So that corpus of data that I talked about, we have partners all over the legal tech space. Um, Big, huge companies use our data through our APIs or a replicated database. They pay a monthly licensing fee that helps generate that. We're also grant funded. We have individual memberships and donations through our nonprofit that funds a lot of this access to justice work. So it's sort of a hodgepodge. Um, Data or funding.
So, as somebody who's founded a couple of startups, I, I can tell you how high the bar is for raising external capital.
Mhm.
We are very blessed in that we've had tremendous growth, and we demonstrated product market fit very early on in the journey. So we get bombarded with VCs knocking on our door,
Mhm.
but we are primarily bootstrapped. We've taken some money from the legal tech fund, and they've been great partners to work with. But our strategy is to push off as much external capital raising as possible, so we maintain control of the business and can really drive it in the direction that we want to. But that raising a small amount of money, even for a startup that has incredible, like we're 100% year over year growth, like
Mhm.
our LTV to CAC ratio, all the SaaS numbers look amazing. But as soon as you say, I want to raise $1 million, VCs are lose interest.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine how hard, and we're for profit. I can't how hard it would be to go to the market and try and get people to write you checks when you're in the A to J space. Like,
Mhm.
how do we, how do we, how do you get this done? I mean, this
Yeah.
seems like a big problem to solve.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this work has been funded through those TIGs, right? The government source of funding, but that's for innovation. It's not for sustainability, and it's not for repainting the bridge every year, right? Like this is infrastructure. And so part of it is going to be that our court partners ultimately are going to have to fund this, the same as they fund their websites, their paper, their court staff. I mean, COVID showed us that the justice system can go online and it can still function, right? So all these rollbacks where you can't go, have virtual hearings for court or a lot of the self-help that was out there, that's not fair to roll back. So part of the advocacy that Free Law Project is doing is that the courts have this responsibility. If 75% of the people showing up to your business, the court is a business, are self-represented litigants, you have to have tools in place for them. And it's part of the cost of running business in America that we fund this sort of stuff. Part of us, Free Law Project, being a nonprofit is that we aren't taking any money off of the top, right? Like I need a salary to live, our devs need to live, but also like we don't have shareholders to report back to. And so there is a lower cost. I've worked on some presentations with like the team out of Suffolk's Lit Lab, and they're big at pushing on open source and procurement and working with nonprofits or academic institutions that can lower the cost of this innovation in the court space. And so, yes, it's going to cost money. Hopefully, it's less than what some commercial off the shelf products are, and hopefully, we have some philanthropic interest in access to justice. You talked about, a lot of people don't know about this justice gap, or it's surprising when you hear about it. It's also room for movement there, right? So we can bring this to a whole new audience of people who are like, oh, I didn't know it was that bad. Like, yeah, it's that bad. And big funders, big philanthropic organizations need to be looking at the justice system the same way that they're looking at public health or whatever their focus is. This is a huge problem in our democracy that we need to solve. That 100 million people are left out on the doorstep, and they can lose their kids and their house and their money, and like it's just I endlessly talk to people about this and they're shocked, and I'm just like, yeah, that's real world what's happening in your community. Your neighbors are feeling this. And so we have to start caring because one of the tripods of our democracy is the justice system, and people have to have trust that it will be fair and will be available for them.
I mean, is it incumbent upon the private sector, like law firms and
Mhm.
the bar and other organizations, to help contribute to bridging this gap?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd love if they wanted to be donations to Free Law Project. We have a Justice Partners Circle that's for law firms who are really interested in making a big contribution to this space, either the Justice Initiative work that I'm doing or our research and our open data and that kind of stuff. But there is a responsibility that you are part of a system, and that you, when you have, you should share. That's sort of a mindset, right? I think our whole society would be a whole lot better if everyone had the mindset that if you have enough, share. And a lot of the law firms or attorneys are already doing this stuff. They're members of their Access to Justice Commission, or they're members of their bar outreach or pro bono. We have attorneys have a pro bono sort of that's ingrained in us that we should be providing that. They're already doing the work. Sometimes all we're asking for is a connection. We don't even need the money, the dollars, if that's not going to work for you. You can make the connection and say, hey, I golf with Judge so-and-so, and he's complaining a lot about, people showing up in his courtroom unprepared. Maybe I could make that connection to these people who want to do something, or make the connection. You could be a door opener. So I read a couple of years ago, you could be a doer, you can be a donator, or you can be a door opener, right? So if you can't do it, that's fine. If you can't donate, okay, do that if you can. Or you can be a door opener. Think about who you know and those connections that you can make. So we're also looking for door openers if we can't get donors or doers.
Yeah, interesting. I would think that there would be maybe some connect points. I know that a lot of big law firms are limited partners in the Legal Tech Fund. And I know they do some work there. That's like I mentioned, I saw a session on it at their summit a couple years ago. But it's just such a massive problem. It's really going to need a multi-pronged solution. I saw an interesting article recently, and I'm sure you did too. It was like, I can't remember if it was Washington Post or New York Times, and it talked about, it was some major news outlet, and they were talking about how it was a case study, and I forget the details, but they basically went and dissected a scenario where a pro se litigant used ChatGPT to help solve her legal issue, and I forget what that legal issue is now. And I saw some really interesting commentary, like, is this UPL? And I feel like that's the last question we need to be asking in these scenarios. But how? Maybe just kind of high level. Do you know the article I'm talking about?
No, but I've had endless conversations about UPL and lawyers feeling like we're going to be eating their lunch. Like, no one is doing this work, right? We're not taking your job, whatever size firm you are. These people are not coming to you anyway. There is someone who's been in this space forever, Mark Lauritsen. He's written a lot about First Amendment and how this sort of automated document assembly tools are not the unauthorized practice of law. They have First Amendment rights, First Amendment protections. So like you can look into that. But yeah, people that we're not eating your we're not eating your lunch, right? And they're with the innovation of ChatGPT, right? It's so available. Everybody's using it. I sat next to a woman in a nail salon, and she was talking to ChatGPT about what color she should paint her nails. And I was like, wow, that's deep in the weeds of like a friendship with your AI. But the idea that they're using it anyway, and so we need the guardrails. And there's 30 years of self-help tools that are out there that are legitimate, that are in plain language, that are in multiple languages, right? English, Spanish, French, whatever the native dialogue is in the jurisdiction. They're subject matter experts. The attorneys have written it. They know it's valid. It's not, trash. Built on Free Law Project's legal data so that there aren't hallucinated citations in it. Part of the Imagine grant that we have pending is we spend a lot of time doing the Gen AI components with their solutions architect, with our AI developer, really thinking about the guidelines and how we're going to make sure that if someone comes in, that they're given jurisdiction-specific materials, that they're not getting stuff from Kansas when they're in Illinois or vice versa. I talked about how it's not evenly dispersed across the country. So there's a lot of content in Illinois. And so that's going to pop up high on the SEO. And that's what the systems are trained on. But that's not going to help you in Kansas or in California or wherever. So jurisdiction specific, that there's human in the loop, that they're ensuring that whatever we put out and say, hey, you could do this, that people are checking that, periodically to ensure that it's valid. Like, use the AI. It's here. People are using it. Let's provide them the guardrails and the safety to ensure that they're getting the legal outcomes that they're supposed to be getting, and that they're not waiving their rights because they filed the wrong response or whatever. Like, you want to protect people. That's the whole point. So our system is going to have guardrails. It's going to be in as many languages as possible that the jurisdiction wants to support. It's going to have a lot of accessibility. So there's a whole, the WCAG standards for and ADA compliance and that kind of stuff. We don't want our tool to also be an additional burden for people who have accessibility issues. So that's also really important to us, that we build a tool that the most amount of people can use in the safest parameters.
And you talked about the courts funding. Like, courts are so underfunded. I mean, you just have to walk into one and it
Mhm.
feels like, a throwback. I Thankfully I haven't been in one in quite some time, but last time I was, it
Mhm.
really felt like I was in a time warp. So, but something that we talked about last time that you mentioned that surprised me is that courts are spending quite a bit of money on things like commercial case management systems. Is that true?
Yeah, we've done some FOIA work and we published it on our website if you guys want to check it out, free.law, where we requested those contracts and these commercial off the shelf things. So it's a little bit like I don't always believe them when they say they don't have money. Like, the people I'm talking to, I believe that the self-help desk isn't properly funded. I get it. I mean, we're right now when we're recording this, right? We're in the middle of a government shutdown. The government saying they have no money when they have like $1 trillion budget, I'm all like, okay, well, let's be relative here. So I think the courts have money. They have to prioritize where that money comes from. And if they don't have the money, let's talk to the legislature and talk about what a huge issue this is. All those lawyers that are working at big firms who are friends with Senator and Representative so and so, let's influence people that way, and start getting proper funding. Like, it's infrastructure. You got to paint, or you got to paint the bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge has to be painted every year. Like, the roads have to be paved. The justice system has to work for self-represented litigants because that's who the majority of the people are. And our democracy falls if the justice system is not trustworthy or doesn't help the people that it's supposed to be helping.
And and Gen AI is fantastic at legal work. So I have been running a very informal study since the beginning of the year. It, Not even a study, just an experiment where all of my legal work through Infodash, and I mean, we're a startup, so we're constantly negotiating new contracts and
Mhm.
signing NDAs and reorganizing our operating agreement and getting funding and all this sort of stuff. So we have a 409A program. I've been running every task that I send to a lawyer through AI just to kind of compare. It is amazing
Yep.
how well AI does. So we had a dispute that we were looking contractually at. Okay, what would happen if we can't come to a resolution on this? So I loaded the documents into, I can't remember which model we use. I usually round robin, or I'll do
Mhm.
one and then ask another model to kind of grade the output. And I had it outline what the process would look like if we did have to, if we couldn't come to a resolution, i.e., mediation, arbitration, map out a timeline, map out projected costs on both
Right.
sides of the case, and it blew my mind how well it mapped this out. Now, I don't let anything leave go out the door that's not looked at by an attorney, but I
Mhm.
have been doing this kind of side by side comparison for a while, and it has really augmented me, what I do as a consumer of legal services. And I don't really want to hear about UPL. Like, I really don't care what people's opinions are on it. I'm going to do
Mhm.
it, and
Yeah.
good luck stopping me.
Yeah.
And good luck stopping people who, like you said, pro se litigants who have absolutely no choice. I have a choice, but I'm going to do it.
I mean, that's
Um,
our DIY culture, right? Like, I'm not going to necessarily call a plumber if, the sink is leaky a little bit. I'm going to watch a YouTube video to try and figure out, like, what do I actually need to tighten, right? I'm not going My first instinct is not going to be to hire a $5,000 have a $5,000 retainer with an attorney. I'm going to try and do it myself and see what I can find, because that's sort of my generation, others, that's we grew up on the internet, right? So that's our first go-to. Is there a YouTube? Can I Google it? Well, the doctor, I'm not going to go to the doctor every time. I'm going to Google my symptoms and, hopefully not have some terrible disease that it tells me. But the guardrails are what's important. I think the AI is great if you have a little bit of subject matter expertise. And that's sort of what we want to ensure that, if it came back to you and had a crazy contract term, you'd be like, that's insane. I've seen 14 of these contracts. That's clearly not right. It's hallucinating that. Or you're like, oh, no, that doesn't apply in Missouri. That's only in New York law, whatever. The self-represented litigant doesn't necessarily know that. A lot of the self-represented litigants, 5th grade reading level, they're in a super stressful situation, right? You're losing your kids, your house, whatever. Like that already shuts off part of your brain when you have the high cortisol levels. And maybe English isn't their first language. And so they don't have that sort of gut, like, this doesn't seem legit. This feels like a lifeline, because they can't get in anywhere else, and they're just so happy to have something to handle their legal system or their legal issue. That's what we want to make sure, that it's vetted by experts, that it has a custom RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, that it has a knowledge base that's structured in a way in which it's only pulling from legitimate data sources, not Ted's basement server that has whatever cases on it. That's really our goal, that people are using it. Let's facilitate it, because the technology is easy. It's just the political will to make sure that these tools get to the people who need them and are funded properly.
Yeah, I feel like with Gen AI, there are so many innovations that law firms and lawyers have historically resisted, like alternative business structures,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think I had somebody on the podcast from an Arizona law firm who they said they were the only ones that didn't vote against the ABS rules in
Oh, the
Arizona.
sandboxes and everything. Yeah.
Right, exactly. In the unauthorized practice of law, the UPL issue, I feel like if you're latching on to these old models and conventions in the legal world, you're really focused in the wrong place,
Mm-hmm.
because I honestly think that lawyers are going to run to alternative business structures once they see the light, which is, wow, if I build a tech-enabled law firm, I can sell it for a multiple of revenue. Like the valuation looks more like a tech company than a law firm, which
Mm-hmm.
would probably sell to three to four times EBITDA. And I can scale,
Yeah.
right? Instead of using humans as leverage, I can use technology as leverage. But there's just so much tradition and
I mean,
old
it's a
thinking.
guild, right?
Yeah.
Like the loss, it's a guild. You're meant to protect your members. I spent a lot of money to go to law school. I spent a lot of money to learn those $100 words. I get it. I would, I didn't go down the traditional, pathway of being a lawyer, but I get it, why we'd want to protect ourselves and ensure that what we do, we spent a lot of time learning how to do it and making sure to safeguard people. Like we talked about the, Fair Debt Act and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Same, we need legislation in place. Um, but a lot of the stuff that tech is doing is so boring. No lawyer wants to copy and paste people's names onto a letter and answer to their landlord, even if they were paying for it. Nobody wants to do that. This came from my time in Chicago. I can't remember now who said it, but let lawyers practice at the top of their license. All of this menial stuff, let the tech do it. Let AI generate the documents and then review it, so that you can be creative, so that you can be the human, so that you can use all the things that make us uniquely special as lawyers. Let's use those skills and build on top of the AI. And right, like I don't need to generate the LinkedIn content every time for a new post. Like, let the AI give me my first draft at that, so that I can come and like talk to you and have time to do that, or to be creative or to think hard thoughts. That's what lawyers are really good at, thinking hard thoughts. If we let the tech do the menial stuff, we can really practice at the top of our license. And so that's what my push is with the AI. That it's not going to eat your lunch. Just embrace it and go for it.
Yeah, and it's like every discipline, you always have to look at what is the highest and best use of my time and my
Mhm.
team's time. It's amazing that in 2025, our biggest competitor are firms that decided to go custom dev. and just go rebuild everything that we've been working on
Mhm.
roughly for like 17 years. And I have to have conversations with them at various stages in the process. We've had firms who have fully deployed, rolled it out, like spent all the money and rolled it out, and then realized, oh my God, this is so much work to maintain
Mhm.
and support, and write documentation and the training and enhancements and bug fixes. We've had them all the way to that end, but obviously where they've converted and go, this is too
Mhm.
much. I want an off the shelf product. But it's the argument that I use when talking to them is, what is the highest and best use of your team's time? Is it responding to support tickets? Because I got a team of people who do
Mhm.
just that for a bunch of different law firms. So why are you going to go essentially re-resource
Mhm.
a function like that? So yeah, I'm really hoping that lawyers, the light bulb goes off and go, yeah, you know what? A lot of this stuff we could use our amazing IQ and training and skills in better ways than we are today.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, the empathy component, right? The feeling, the connection with people, the hand holding that a lot of self-represented litigants need because no one is listening to them and these are terrible situations. We can provide that as lawyers where the where does your name go on a form? That's crazy. Like type that into any of the document assembly tools that have existed for 30 years. But let's really do what we're good at as humans.
Agreed. Well, this has been a fantastic
Yeah,
conversation. I really appreciate you taking time.
of course.
How do people find out more about you and the Free Law Project?
Yeah, so our website is free.law. You can check out all of our products from there. If you want to connect with me, I'm Jessica at free.law. We try to make it as easy as possible. So love to talk to you. We love talking to new lawyers about this, to law students, to different audiences, to different groups that might not understand the justice gap. I presented at ILTACon in August about project management, but like threw in about the justice gap. We can really make it work for the audience. So we want more door openers. So if you're out there, I'd love to talk to you about it.
Well, it's been a great conversation. I hope people take you up on that offer,
Yeah.
and thank you very much for all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content.